Building a Zetros Overlander was a dream I had, and after battling for 4 months, I finally managed to secure a chassis. When that chassis arrived here in Renosterkop, I was super impressed. But the thing that really made me think a lot was the weight of this thing. The chassis as it stood there weighed just under 11 kilograms, and that is a lot of weight. These two images was what inspired me to start this project of building the Zetros Overlander. With the chassis here, I could start planning the body. My first task was to familiarize myself with this chassis. I had to make sure that I understand the mechanics and how everything is put together. And then after I've looked through the chassis and the drivetrain, I had to make sure that I understand and know the dimensions and limits of the articulation of the truck, because it will be stupid to just build and then at the end find out that the wheels catches the body. So I made very sure that I understood the limits of the articulation. After familiarizing myself with the chassis and the workings of every component in there, it was time for me to take the chassis as it is on a little bit of a test drive. It was important for me to see how the truck will react and how it will conduct itself on obstacles. Obviously, this is not a crawler, and it's going to be an overlander. But Renosterkop is rough country, and there's no paving and things like that, just a little bit here in my yard. It was important for me just to see and to understand the capabilities and the abilities of the truck. And from that, I could use a lot of the information in my planning of the ultimate build. But what I've seen here is very impressive. The next step was to strip the spare wheel and the fifth wheel off the chassis and start measuring and planning the actual dimensions of the load bed. This was important, that the load bed looked scale and that it looked as if it fits properly. You don't want to have it too big or too small. Due to the weight of the truck, I decided to use plexiglass and aluminium instead of styrene, because if this truck rolls, there must be substantial elements to minimize damage. I had to do a lot of fabrication, and it was important to make sure that whatever I made looked scale. I also used teak on the chassis to lift the body to accommodate the articulation of the wheels, because I didn't feel like putting aluminium there. The teak looked more authentic to me, and it worked out perfectly. It is strong, it absorbs shock, and it will last. And it used to be timber in the old days. Slowly but surely, the frame started taking shape, and every step made it a little bit more exciting to see it. And it was important all the time to make sure that every component was put in place properly and secured properly. These components must be able to take and handle a crash. The next step was important for me. I'm a visual type of guy, and I need to see things to create more enthusiasm. And painting the cab was making a big difference to my thought train. The next step, I focused on the back of the truck. There I had to make provision for the spare wheels, as well as a carrier to carry the BMW 1200 GS bike. It is important that all these things that are placed onto the cab is done in such a way that they are strong, sturdy, and solid, and they must be able to take a punch. If something goes wrong, they must not break off or bend. It was now time to work on the roof. This was a new challenge. I decided to split the roof in 3 compartments, a view deck at the front and 2 carriers at the back, and right at the tail there will be some solar panels. Constructing all these different components had their own challenges, and many times I had to do things over. But in the end, it was again important that whatever is placed on this roof is placed in such a way and built in such a way that it will take a shot if something goes wrong with the truck. The view deck is now finished, and the railing on top of the roof is also done. The ladder has been installed, and now we have to put up the windows and the door, as well as the solar panels at the back of the truck. In the end, that roof was extended to form a canopy over the spare wheel and give some protection to the bike. The deck itself in the front is something just nice to have. The construction of the carriers had to be done also very strong and sturdy. But the truck looks good, and I like it. It was now time to finalize the carrier at the back for the spare wheels and the bike. And it is turned out well. I like the way it finishes the truck off at the back and gives some visual impact. I really like what I am seeing. I am now working on the interior of the cab. This is not so much construction as more nice to look at, and I couldn't leave it grey as it is. So I did take some time and jazz it up a bit and make it look a little bit more realistic, and I like the way it turned out. In the end, this is a very expensive project, and it's worth your while doing it well. Here are some images of the fabrication of the different exterior components like the windows and the doors and the solar panels. Many watching this would say you can do this with a 3D printer. Unfortunately, I don't have a 3D printer, so I have to fabricate and make do with items and materials at my disposal. In the end, I don't think it turned out too bad. I like it. It looks good and it looks functional. This is now the end of part 1. Part 2 will follow soon. Please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to make sure you don't miss the second part.